Hello everyone and welcome to the Long War! Alright, so, welcome to our first ever Long War battle report from JAAD Productions. I'm Jay, and today we're bringing you a battle report which will be showing you how the Long War is played. It is going to be 1,000 points of Imperial Guard versus 1,000 points of Tyranids. So, let's delve right into the lists and go into these before we get to the game, get to the setup, and start throwing some dice. Alright everyone, so for 1,000 points of Imperial Guard, running today in the Imperial Guard list, it is only 1,000 points, there's quite a number here. The first things first is that it is a custom regiment, so as a custom regiment, it's selected two traits. The two traits selected were Buzzsaw, which gives all heavy stubbers and heavy bolters in the list, and linked heavy bolters and linked heavy stubbers, one additional attack when they shoot. So, lots more try and pinning fire out of that. More suppressive fire coming out of those heavy bolters. The other one was Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg is giving all of these vehicles a scout move. So these two units here are vehicle type, the Chimera and the Lehman Russ. And then all the infantry are receiving sprint 1, so that when they advance and charge, they add 1 to the distance they go. In addition, if they are within 6 inches of a vehicle, they get sprint 2 instead, so they add 2 to their charge and add 2 to their advance. So it makes them pretty fast and mobile for getting up the board and keeping up with the vehicles overall. So then, as a result of being a custom regiment, in the first battle round, the IG will not generate any additional command points beyond just their regular one, so none of the officers here. In terms of officers, that is what we'll dive into right now. First is the HQ choice, the Company Command Squad. So this Company Command Squad has a Heavy Flamer, a Vox, a Medic, a Regimental Banner, ignore the Power Sword on the Banner guy, and then the Company Commander there has the it's just a Chainsword. And for the Warlord trait on the Company Commander there, who's this is one unit, he's part of this unit, he has the Master of Command, so he's generating extra command points, so the IG start off with a little bit more to make up for the fact that they're having less as part of being this custom regiment. Then, on top of that, this entire force is inside a single... focus camera. Inside a single Rite of War. An infantry company Rite of War. And the IG list here isn't actually making good use of the list, but it's of the Rite of War, but it's still making, still getting some of the benefits of it while still obeying all the restrictions. The primary one that's really only going to matter for this battle, because 2 of those benefits were just not taken advantage of in this list, is that whenever an infantry squad would throw a grenade weapon, the grenade actually gets barrage 3. So that's pretty good to represent them all hocking grenades together, or bundles of grenades. So our HQ, after the company commanders, we don't have any other HQs, we then go into our troops. There's 2 units of troops. 1 infantry guardsman squad, just with a Vox and heavy bolter. Another one that is identical. Then there is another guardsman squad. These guys just have Flamer and Vox. And then there's another one that has Flamer and Vox. So there's that. And now, because those are infantry, because they have the infantry section, basically everything you see here, this heavy weapons team, this heavy weapons team, this special weapons team, don't actually take up any force organization slots. These are free because I brought these, because each one with infantry section allows you to take one of these and one of these and a platoon command if I had the points for it, for free, basically, without taking up a force organization slot. You still got to pay the points. So there's that. So those are really technically troops choices that are part of these. So there's that. And speaking of which, there is of course a heavy weapons team here with 3 autocannons, 1 with 3 mortars, a special weapon team with 3 grenade launchers. Grenade launchers are very good in the long war. They're a little bit expensive, but they do good work, especially their crack rounds, which have seen much improvement. There's a commissar here who can assist us, and the commissar is going to be joining an Imperial Guard unit, most likely, to provide additional buffs. There is, at the back there, of course, the Armored Sentinel as a fast attack choice. The Armored Sentinel has a plasma cannon. Not a terrible choice in this edition of the game. Then, finish things off, there is a Chimera as a dedicated transport. It is just a stock Chimera with heavy bolter, heavy stubber, las, smoke, so on. And then there is a Leman Russ. Just a basic Leman Russ to provide some fire support. It has no sponsons, no nothing. Technically it has a heavy stubber because they all have the heavy stubber in the Long War as a basic weapon. But it's just not modeled on here. It has the heavy bolter, and it's just got the battle cannon. And that is 1,000 points of Imperial Guard for the Long War. Okay, and going up against the Imperial Guard today is this 1,000 points of Tyranids. Now, it looks like the Tyranids are quite heavily outnumbered by the Imperial Guard, but there's reasons for that, and it's not quite as not quite as much of the disadvantage as you might expect. So, what is happening here is this is a first things first. This is Behemoth for a Hive Fleet, and as a Behemoth, it gets Rage 1, all of its units, and on top of that, its monsters get 1 additional Hammer Wrath attack. So, looking at monsters here in the back. So, then on top of that, this entire list here is inside an Assault Wave Rite of War. Now, the Assault Wave has a bunch of requirements. Part of this requirement is that in the Assault Wave, you need to have 1 Hive Tyrant, 1 Tyranid Prime, 1 Tyranid Warrior Squad, and 1 Hormigaunt Squad, and 1 Termagant Squad. So, that is the minimum for this. Now, the benefits of that is that the monsters in this list get the Outflank special rule, so that they can outflank, he can outflank if he wants, and so can the all-important Carnifex. In addition, these guys, great thing about the Assault Wave is now the Assault Wave allows you to bring back dead squads of Gaunts, specifically Hormigaunts and Termagaunts. So these 3 units can be recycled over the course of the game. So it's actually bad for the Imperial Guard to kill them unless they really need to clear them off of objectives or they're posing a threat. Now, even just a few of them can be quite a terrifying threat in the Long War. So there is that to consider, but the fact that they have returning models that, if completely killed off, can arrive on the board via outflank from reserves means the Tyranids only look outnumbered. And this also helps make up, because the whole point of this list was to actually build for something fairly expensive. And this is where that comes in. This Hive Tyrant here is the most expensive thing in this list. He is extraordinarily expensive, but he is incredibly powerful. The Hive Tyrant is worth the points of both of these vehicles put together. And the Hive Tyrant is incredibly good. Now, probably not the best loadout, but as a Psyker with wings, he's very mobile, he's got the Brain Leech Devourers, very strong. He's got Synaptic Linchpin as the Warlord trait, which means his synapse range extends to 24 inches. Synapse in this edition is something we'll get to in a little bit. It's much more of a tactical choice whether or not you actually want to be in Synapse or not, so that's something to consider. Now, coming along with him is, of course, another HQ. It's a Tyranid Prime. This Tyranid Prime has the Barbed Strangler, he's got Flesh Hooks, and, of course, Bone Swords. Pretty good loadout, pretty staple loadout. He's the equivalent of a Space Marine captain. Pretty good. Then, let's talk troops. There's nothing fancy going on here in the troops section. There's 2 units of Hormagaunts, to try and make use of the ability of the Rite of War to bring back respawning units that are slain. By basically being a melee unit, it's going to force the IG to have to deal with them, because the IG just don't do melee very well. The Termagaunts as well, Termagants here are as well in a troops choice. They're pretty good. They've only got the Flesh Borers. The Flesh Borers are much improved in this edition of the Long War, being 18 inches, and essentially being 18-inch bolt guns that are assault. Then there's the Tyranid Warriors. The Tyranid Warriors are pretty good for their points cost. They're pretty chunky. They shouldn't die too easily if all things go right. They have the Scything Talons. There's 2 Death Spitters in there, and there's a Venom Cannon for dealing with enemy armor, which is going to be needed. There is, of course, a Carnifex with Tusks, Spore, Carapace, 2 Scything Claws, and he's got the Bone Mace Tail. Just running everything as WYSIWYG as possible. And then, finally, there is the Exocrine. Or Exocrine? Not sure how you pronounce it, but it's an Exo something, and this thing was the bane of everything in pretty much every edition since 7th to 9th, and in the Long War, it's a pretty good performer, and it provides solid anti-armor, so there's a reason the Tyranids opted for that. So, the Tyranids look like they're facing an uphill battle. They are quite outnumbered, but they have a number of tricks up their sleeve. They have psychic powers, which are incredibly powerful. They have these monsters, which, if things go right, will not die fast, and they can be protected in outflank, so there is that. Honestly, this engagement, almost despite how it looks in terms of the army's setup here at 1,000 points, depending on what the scenario is, currently favors these guys, in my humble opinion. So, yeah. Let us go into now deployment and setup. Deployment is now finished. The scenario that was rolled up was Hold or Die. In Hold or Die, a marker is placed in the center of the battlefield, and players roll off, determining who is attacker and defender. The defender deploys first, and the attacker deploys second. The defender has to basically deploy within a 12-inch square in the center of the battlefield, and the attacker comes on from either of the long edges for their deployment zone. So that is what has transpired. So IG won the roll-off and chose to be the attacker, since it would be a more advantageous position for them to maneuver around. So there is that. Now, Tyranids placed their warrior and Tyranid Prime along with a Termagant and Hormagaunt squad, because the additional rule in this scenario is that both sides have to deploy half of their units on the battlefield, and then the other half go into outflank reserves regardless. So there is that. Worked out quite well for the Tyranids, because a few things. Would have been nice to have another group of Hormagaunts on the battlefield to try and squeeze that area off and force the Guardsmen back. The Guardsmen have deployed here on that side with an infantry squad, the Leman Russ, the mortars, and the autocannons. Over on this side, they have a infantry squad with a heavy bolter. Another one over there is a heavy. One over there is a flamer, and a sentinel on this side. And then, of course, the Tyranids got the stun. There's a nice 12 inches, well, more than 12 inches here to make sure the Guardsmen are suitably far enough back. And then there is the scenario rule. Now, victory in this scenario is determined upon several things. First, at the end of the game, whoever holds this objective scores 3 victory points. In addition, there is additional victory points scored for every enemy unit completely slain, which means want to kill these now for the Imperial Guard. And this includes units that cycle in and are summoned on from reserves, such as the free units that the units get when these die and are replaced. In addition, both sides have their secondaries. The secondary objective for the Imperial Guardsmen is to not let any enemies end the game within their deployment zone, and now because of the deployment zones being across both long table edges here and at 1,000 points, that's going to be a pretty hard one to pull off, all things considered. The Tyranid one, I have to double check. Okay, I've been informed that the Tyranid secondary objective is, in fact, Consume, which requires the Tyranids to have at least more units left on the battlefield at the end of the game than their opponent. So, quite tricky to pull off in this circumstances. The Tyranid will have to kill a lot and get a lot of lucky charges, and rely a lot upon various aspects. Deployment has now been finished. We're going to go into the pre-deployment or post-deployment step to see if anyone's got any post-deployment shenanigans to do. There's none that I'm super aware of. But the Tyranids now have to pick their adaptive physiology for the game. So, we have rolled off for who will take the first turn while thinking about the Tyranids and their adaptive physiologies. The Tyranids will be going first. They will be taking the first turn in this game in a lucky clutch dice roll there. And for their adaptive physiologies, the Tyranids are going to go with exoskeletal stabilization, which gives all of their monster type units the relentless special rule, and the dynamic camouflage, which gives all infantry type units the benefits of light cover unless they're already benefiting from cover. So a bit more survivability on the infantry, and a bit more mobility for the firepower on the larger Tyranids. It's mostly going to affect the exocrine. So, that is that. Now, as we're going into the first battle round, the Imperial Guard are generating command points to use for their combat orders. Now, because the Imperial Guard are taking a custom regiment, they are actually only generating 1 plus 2 additional ones for a grand total of 3 command points, because they do not generate any additional ones from their officers, and even though the officers are actually, none of them have started on the battlefield, officers still generate command points while they're in transports or off the battlefield in reserves. So there is that. So starting with 3 instead of 1, thanks to the warlord trait selected, but because of the custom regiment, the IG will not get any additional ones. So they're going to make use for 3 for this entire battle round. So we will go now into the Tyranids movement phase. Surged down from this position and relocating, and I'll explain exactly what has happened here. So this unit from over there, it chose to just leave those guardsmen completely be and advanced 10 inches, because in the long war you advance your movement plus your initiative, and these guys are initiative 4 with a base movement of 6 because they're infantry. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So, and they relocated over to here, looking to really threaten the guardsmen over here, because this is the primary threat. These guys had to move through difficult terrain, which gave them a -2 to their movement. So they only went 4 inches, which they used to kind of pull themselves forward closer to this objective, into some cover as best they can, and also get their weapons into good range. And these gaunts did much the same thing. They just did a normal move, moving, again, 4 inches, just enough to get out of that difficult terrain. But they have clumped up, which means they will be nice and vulnerable to the blast from this battle cannon should you choose to target them. Though most of these will be. So there is that, difficulty. So, now into the shooting phase. There were also no psychic powers for the Tyranids in that phase. Psychic powers at the start of the shooting phase, and starting off the shooting phase, these Termagants here fired into this unit of Guardsmen with the front 4 being in range with their 18-inch ranges, and rolling their 1 shot each. Because they're ballistic skill 3, they were looking for 4s to hit on the chart, to which they only got 1 hit. Now, on the chart, basically, ballistic skill 2 is hitting on 5s, ballistic skill 1 is hitting on 6s, ballistic skill 3 is hitting on 4s, 4s is hitting on 3s, 5s is hitting on 2s, 6 is hitting on 2s and re-rolling any 1s, and hitting on any re-rolled 6s. And it goes so on until you hit BS 10. So there is that. So next, they have to roll to wound, and they have strength 4 guns against toughness 3 targets. So because their toughness is lower than their weapon's strength, that 1 hit requires a 3 to wound. So, okay, so the hit wounded, and then for the Tyranids, so now that is wounded, the IG now need to make a save. Now, here's the thing that is transpiring. The AP of these flesh borers is AP 5, and these Guardsmen only have a 5-up save, so it goes straight through their armor. Now, because they are obscured, or at least some of the models are obscured, the Guardsman could claim a cover save, particularly this Guardsman here, this Squad Sergeant, who is a little bit obscured from the rest of these guys. However, as a result though, I don't want that Sergeant dying. I really don't want him dying. So, in order to make a cover save, it would be light cover, which grants a 6-up cover save, and cover saves ignore AP. If they were heavily obscured, if they were 50% obscured, it would be a 5-up cover save. 25% is a 6-up. And there's only 1 or 2 ways in the entire system to get better than a 5-up cover save, due to 4-up cover save, but it's always either just a 6-up or a 5-up cover saves. Now, though, because I don't want that Sergeant dying, and this wound goes straight through, someone has to die. Now, it does have to be not only someone within range of these guys, but also someone they can physically see. So I'm going to quickly remeasure to see who is in range, because I really don't want the Flamer dying, because the Flamers are really, really good weapons, and they're perfect for taking that out. And if I've flopped my positioning here, and yeah, if I flop my positioning, it means that I either have to kill the Flamer or the Sergeant. And I don't want either of them dying, because the Sergeant can issue orders to the squad, and the Flamer is a very nice heavy weapon, or special weapon. So let me check which ones specifically are in range, because if I can, I will try and allocate the wound to this guy. Okay, so here's the deal. He was just out of range, this guy, just by a hair's breadth. So it has to be allocated to guys who are not only within range, but also visible. So I am going to end up losing the Flamer as he dies. So long, Private Stevens. Kind of blurry, so I don't want to show you. Private Stevens. And he is dead or wounded. And now, so that's that. Now, they've been shot at by these Termagants. Now, if they'd suffered 25% casualties, they'd have to make a panic test to see if they fell back towards my declared table edge. Now, in this case, I have actually selected this table edge here as my table edge. So anyone falls back this way, so even those guys back there will fall back this way. Now, here is the primary finagle. I'm so glad I really kind of deployed a little bit too aggressively here. But then on top of that, if their weapon had pinning, I might have had to take a pinning test from being hit from that. But fortunately, I do not. These IG guardsmen, brave, loyal Australise, who are basically here to, as I imagine it, here, this is like set during the war for Australise, if you've seen our first narrative campaign, which we do hope to do another one soon as life allows. I'm going to say that, yeah, this battle here is like during like maybe the Battle of Adelaide or one of the surrounding battles, where the IG were actually largely victorious or even semi-victorious and are securing this little area from the Tyranids. So, yeah. Poor Stevens. Going now into the rest of their shooting phase, the Tyranids now need to resolve these warriors and the prime. So quick correction there before we move on to their shooting phase. So it actually is only allocating wounds to those within a line of sight. So I can allocate to this guy. The rules for allocating to guys within line of sight and range only applies to spray weapons, such as his flamer, to prevent you from flaming people at the front and killing people at the back. So because they showed this, I can actually assign it to anywhere in the unit so long as the model is visible. So instead, this guy here, Private Pilgrim, will die as well, because I don't need his lasgun as much as I need that flamer there. So, anyway, caught that mistake, because we're going a bit slow here, because we want to get it right to show everyone how the Long War is played and the rules accurately as of the current version of the game. So, there is that. Now we'll go on to resolving these Tyranids. Okay, so, in the shooting phase, these Tyranid warriors and their prime have decided to, and the prime is currently attached to this unit, so they're operating as one unit essentially for purposes of targeting, but not for the purposes of anything else. So there is that. So they fired, they've already done it, and it's not pretty. So they declared that they would fire their Death Spitters into the guardsmen down here, who they can see but are quite heavily obscured. So I will actually get a 5-up cover save against that. But then the Venom Cannon, because it's strength 7, doesn't like its odds of chipping through the front armor of this Lehman Russ, I forgot. Because at strength 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, it would require, well, it's actually just not possible for it. So the best it can do is achieve armor 13 at this stage. So it would have to actually get into the side armor, which is probably the plan later on if it doesn't die to like a Carnifex or any of the other big monsters. So instead, the Venom Cannon is actually going all the way down there to that Sentinel, which we'll resolve in a moment to show you how that works, because it's a blast weapon. And we'll show you how the blast rules work. But for now, I've got this. I've got the 7 wounds. They're quite heavily obscured. All of them are obscured enough. So fast rolling this, looking for that 5-up cover save. Doing fairly well with 3 guys dying to that. So I'm just going to allocate it to these 2 guys here, and him here. And now that is 25% of the unit. So, I do now require a panic test to see if they panic. Now, they are leadership 6 base. They are the sergeant is 7, so using the highest leadership in the unit, I roll my 2d6 for my leadership test, and if it's below his leadership, they will stay where they are and they won't panic. If it's above their leadership, they will panic, and they will then proceed to move 2d6 inches towards my nearest board edge, towards my declared board edge. Specifically, actually, it goes to your declared board edge that you came in from. So they run back to the place where they came. So there is that. Now, I do have a Vox there, and I've made sure to keep the Vox alive. The Vox gives me a reroll on this. If I had my Regimental banner, that would be better, but I don't. So, again, looking for a 7 to panic. 5, 6, crud. Alright, so these guys are going to panic. 5, 6, 7, 8, yep. So, after panicking, they are now going to move 2d6 inches towards this board edge as fast as they can go. 6 inches, so let me measure and resolve that. Sorry, I did just immediately say that the Vox actually gives me a reroll on that, which I remembered the moment I turned the camera off to start moving things. I was like, wait a moment, I meant to reroll that with the Vox. Okay, so trying again with the Vox. Okay, so they are good. Man, that Vox has just literally paid for itself for 5 points. So, that makes me feel much better that this guardsman stay there with the Vox as someone else, the commander who's still out flanking, is like, oh, you mean you're under fire? It's your whole point. Don't run away. Golly on, chaps. You need to keep moving forward. Tally-ho, into the Tyranids moors, I say. Give him a good 1-2 whopping for it. So, then we're going to go over there and resolve the Venom Cannon from that warrior. Okay, so because the Venom Cannon is a blast weapon, what happens when you go to shoot a blast weapon is you lay down instead of rolling to following the normal sequence, you place down a blast marker first. This is the epicenter of the blast. Now, because this is a small blast, just a regular blast, anything within 3 inches of that blast marker will be hit by the weapon. A large blast is a 5-inch marker. Otherwise, it's roll to hit as normal, and rolling to hit, Tyranids, yep, you just hit. So that lands right there, which at 3 inches is actually going to catch these guys as well, at least one of them, probably 2 of them. So just going to double check that. Okay, so the blast marker does actually catch these 3 guardsmen within its 3-inch radius as the plasma flies on through and hits here. Now, because the blast is coming from this direction, and they are actually somewhat, even slightly visible to the firer, even though they are obscured, they'll still get a cover save, these guys. If they weren't visible at all, they wouldn't actually get a cover save, as it would just explode and catch them. So there is that. And as for this guy, it is AP 2 because it's bioplasma, so it's going straight through his armor if it wounds. Strength 7 against his toughness 6. So it is going to wound on a 3. And then, while I've got this pointed over, you want to... Yep. Okay. And then wounding these guys on 2s, because strength 7 versus toughness 3. If your strength is double the target's toughness, you wound on 2s. So the end result here is that these ones were for the infantry. So 2 wounds on the infantry and 1 wound on the sentinel. So that goes straight through the sentinel and takes him down a wound. Now he's only got 3 or 4 wounds. I think it's 3. It's 3 or 4. So he'll go down 1. I'll double check in a moment. And now I have to make cover saves for these guys. I'm just gonna roll. And looking for, it's gonna be quite heavily obscured, so looking for 5-ups. Okay, and one of these guys will die, and we will allocate it to this guy here, as he's caught in the blast as the plasma comes here and splashes over and hits that other guy. Now that's not 25%, so they don't need to take a panic test. Single model units don't take panic tests. You can take a pinning test, but this weapon isn't pinning. And so that is actually going to be it for the shooting phase once I allocate a wound to this sentinel. And we will then go on to the charge phase, where we'll explain it, but I don't think Tyranids will be performing any charges, since the only ones eligible to perform a charge... Actually, they're all eligible to perform a charge, but none of them within charge range, and we'll explain that in a moment. Now, this Sentinel is now down to 3 wounds. I've allocated 1 wound to it, so technically you'd count up, but for the purposes of visually showing you guys, he's got 3 wounds remaining, because he's taken 1, he's got 4 wounds. He's not as tough as a Dreadnought, he has a similar amount of wounds, but he's nowhere near the performance of a Dreadnought, which is why they're so much more expensive than just for some insane wounds. They have better strength, toughness, everything about them. So, yes. Now, to explain something before we move on. Now, we did discuss the charge phase and the rest of the turn off camera real quick. But basically, what would have happened if the blast marker had missed is your opponent, if you miss with a blast weapon, gets to move, and the term is scatter, the blast marker 3 inches from where you put it down, or 5 inches if it's a large blast. So, if that Tyranid warrior had missed, I would have been able to move the blast marker this way, making sure it wouldn't be able to hit these guys. Now, if my positioning had been right, I could have potentially done it so that, like, it would miss this guy completely, but because he put it, like, dead on the center of it, it was always going to hit this guy, almost guaranteed, due to the splash. But I could have at least spared these guys. And there's a little bit of manipulation when it comes to placing your blast markers, which we're going to see when it comes to my shooting phase with the Imperial Guard and those mortars over there in the back, who each one of them is firing off a blast. So, there is that. Now, in terms of the charge phase, and by extension the combat phase, so nothing here is actually eligible to charge, because there is no charge targets within 12 inches that they can get to. In addition, they can, an important thing to note is, like, these guys split fire, for example. Now, you can fire and split fire between the models. Each model can only shoot 1 weapon unless its type says otherwise. For example, a walker type, or a vehicle type, or it has a firing protocol special rule. Now, if these guys were, say, in charge range of something that they shot, you do have to, if you did shoot something, you do have to actually attempt to charge at least one thing that you shot at when you declare a charge. So there is that. You can only charge things you shot at. And now if you declare a multi-charge into targets, all those targets have to be something you shot at as well. So you actually have incentive to split your fire a little bit. Now, on top of that, they also have assault weapons, which allow them to move and charge. If they're rapid-fire weapons, like these las guns here, they cannot actually charge if they choose to shoot them. Don't mind those, I haven't removed my casualties yet. And so on. Heavy weapons are the same thing, you can't move and charge. Only assault weapons and pistols and grenade-type weapons allow you to shoot them and charge. So that's an important thing to note. And there's a fair amount of nuance in terms of charging and declared charges, which we might see a little bit later, but probably not, given the low points value of this game and how simple it is. But that will, since that's the case, that is the end of the Tyranids, turn 1. So we will now go into the Imperial Guard turn 2, which I'm going to summarize a fair amount, unless we want to particularly show too much, just because I'll be behind the camera. Well, I'm behind the camera and, you know, yeah. So. Okay, so, quick summary, having finished my movement phase. So, these autocannons are displaced and moved over here, and now because they're heavy weapons, if they choose to fire those, they'll be hitting on 6s this turn, but they don't actually have anything that they'll be able to hit at this stage, but I needed to move them out here, and if I was going to do that, that would have left them quite vulnerable to these guys. So I chose to move this Guardsman squad over this way, just with a regular move, in order to screen them a little bit. Meanwhile, the tank trundled forward. As a vehicle, it has a base move of 10 inches. So it's trundled forward, it's 10, just to get nice and close to these, where it's going to unload with everything. The mortars stayed perfectly still. The Sentinel advanced, it moved forward. It didn't actually perform an advance move. So it moved forward, it's 8 inches. Walkers have a move characteristic of 8 base. So it moved there and hoping to hide itself from this fire. It's a little bit too tall for that, but it now will get at least heavy cover for a 5-up cover save. While also lining itself up for shots at these guys. Those guys at the back there also advance. Now, if I hadn't advanced them, they might have been able to like plink some shots off through the legs of the walker at these guys, maybe kill 1 or 2. But because I advanced them and moved them 9 inches with 6 plus their initiative 3 for 9, I did not. But I've also just remembered that my trait is actually Blitzkrieg for my custom regiment. And so Blitzkrieg actually gives me sprint 1, so they'll move an extra inch on top of that. So there is that to keep in mind. So I did forget about Blitzkrieg because I'm not used to using it. So, yeah, so they move forward another little inch because they have sprint 1, which adds 1 to their advance. So they advanced 10 inches. So they've just trundled forward there, and I'll make sure that's perfectly an inch in a moment from where they were. But yeah, that is the end of the Imperial Guard movement phase. So we're now going to go into shooting. Summary of how my shooting phase went with the Imperial Guard. So this guy here, I spent one of my command points of my 3, bringing me down to 2. I only needed to spend that because I had no other real use for any of the other ones. I could have used one to get them a little bit further, but I would have had to remember that at the time. So this one, he got take aim as a command. Actually, no, whoops. He should not have actually been having take aim because there's no officer nearby to issue it because he can't issue it to himself. Whereas this sergeant can issue it to his unit. So he needed a commander nearby, so he couldn't have taken it. So I'll have to actually, I don't know, I'll redo this one. Because what happened is he split his fire. The battle cannon, which I'm still yet to resolve, will do last, as going to them. But I just realized now I forgot to resolve it. Why didn't you remind me? The heavy bolter here, with its 4 shots, went into this group here. And now, because of Buzzsaw, I had 5 shots with it. And the, just imagine that there's a heavy stubber here, because rules say it has one in the Long War, went into the Gaunt squad over there. So, what basically happens with that is, 2 of these died. One of them lived thanks to the cover save from their adaptation, and 2 of them died. And then before I resolved battle cannon, because I forgot about it, because I got 2 blown away, the mortars then proceeded to fire into the Hormagaunt squad over here. Now, the first one, or the first 2, missed the point that I placed like dead in the middle. Now, because of the Tyranid positioning there, he could only mitigate the damage to the Tyranids, so that was the best he could do. So what happened is, hitting on 5s, of the 3 mortar blasts, 1 was on target and 2 missed, and the 1 on target scored everyone was able to hit every single one of them in the unit, bar 1, so for a 7. And then the other ones scattered and only got 4 hits each. He could have potentially, if it wasn't for the poor positioning, and been a little bit more precise, because we're playing very loosey-goosey on Aaron, could have mitigated that further to be less hits. So there is that. But it was 4 hits for each of the ones that scattered, as they were less effective. So there is that, and in the resulting wound roll, they were blown away, absolutely just hammered, as the mortars smashed into that area. But that's actually really bad for me right now as the Imperial Guard, because that is now that gets me a victory point, And but it now makes this move having been useless when I could have pressed my advantage over here. And on top of that, now, of course, that is now a free unit of Tyranids, which is now going to be recycled thanks to the Tyranid Rite of War, and come on the board somewhere much, much closer to me, ready to eat me, which I am not happy about. So that has actually been monumentally awful for me, in all probability. Now I'm going to go resolve this tank battle cannon shell into them. They've actually been left with no targets. Nothing over there can actually see anything. So, yeah. And it did come to us while talking about things, while I was resolving things, about Synapse. Now, I'm sure you're probably curious about it, because Synapse, I said my warlord trait at the beginning for the, because I built the lists. The warlord trait for the Tyranids was a 24-inch Synapse. So the 24-inch Synapse is up from 12 inches. Now, the Hormagaunts didn't start in, well, technically they did start in Synapse because they were close enough to these guys. But if they weren't in Synapse, they wouldn't have actually been affected. Not being in Synapse gives you instinctive behavior as a special, one of your army special rules, which gives the unit Frenzy. And that's all it does. It gives them Frenzy, which only kicks in when they're hurt. Otherwise, they act as normal. Being within the Synapse instead gives them Leadership 10 and Stubborn, so that their leadership cannot be modified. And it's thanks to that that these guys didn't panic, and not only did they not lose enough to panic, but they didn't get pinned from the pinning weapons on this tank. So just to clarify that on Synapse, in case anyone was wondering how that came into effect and what that might have meant and what the Synapse range was, just to explain that very quickly. Again, all of the rules for the Long War you can go see below in the links. So there's that. Now to finish resolving this. Okay, so now having finished resolving the battle cannon into these guys, what happened was, because it wasn't an indirect fire like these ones, for indirect fire you can place the blast marker wherever you want. But regular weapons that don't have indirect fire, in the case of blast weapons like the battle cannon here, can only go where you can actually see them. So I had to place it there. Now that meant if it hit, I couldn't actually get the full squad. I could only get 3 of them. Now fortunately I did hit and get them there, which got me 3 total hits, which then proceeded to wound. And then, now we didn't mention it, but at the start of the shooting phase, the Tyranids did perform a psychic power from this guy, who is Psychic Mastery 1, and he performed Catalyst to give the unit a 5+ Feel No Pain. And what had happened is, after the 6+ cover, and then after the 5 Feel No Pains, not a single one of the wounds was negated. And because these guys were T4, and the battle cannon is strength 8, even though they had 2 wounds each, it was an instant death. So it just killed 3 of them with the 3 wounds that went through. Netting me another victory point. That one I'm less displeased about because that just took care of them. But at the same time, I would have liked to have taken care of him, but that might have been me getting too greedy. The Tyranids knew that they were going to get hammered first up here when I won the roll-off and chose to be the attacker. It could have been much worse if they'd gone second, but they got the first turn. Because they have the first turn, they're up next in turn 2. In battle round 2, they have the first turn, and now all those reserves are going to come on. And I am dreading this. Yeah, this might not be so good. And I should explain how the psychic powers worked, because we didn't actually cover it. We did gloss over it. Because we've been playing and testing the Long War here for a little while, so we're not quite used to filming it as much. So He's a Psyker. He's Psychic Mastery level 1, so he can cast 1 per player turn. And so what he chose to cast was Catalyst. Honestly, it would have been probably better with Paroxysm on this instead. But it actually wouldn't have made a difference. Neither's power would have made a difference. And then you roll 2d6, and you make a Psychic test, and it's got to be under your leadership. And Synapse, leadership 10, so pretty easy for the Tyranids. They're pretty good Psychers. If it's over, you suffer a Parallel Warp, and you go roll on the Parallel Warp table. If it's below your leadership value, you get the power off. So there is that. So he passed that, but unfortunately, the Feel No Pain did not help. They felt all the pain from that instant death weapon, and neither did the dynamic camouflage. So now into the Tyranids, turn 2, where a lot of things are about to come on. Okay, so start of the Tyranids turn 2, rolling for outflank. So for every one of these guys that are outflanked, basically on a D6, on a 3+, they came in. So what happened is the Hormagorn squad and the refreshed Hormagorn squad actually have not shown up yet. However, what did show up was the Carnifex, who's come in within 6 inches of the table edge and 9 inches away from any enemy units. The Exocrine over there with clear line of sight to that, which is a good threat that's got to be eliminated. Then because the Tyranids have got Relentless, he can just move around and hopefully get into the side armor of this a little bit, or even penetrate its front armor, give him a choice. Need that side armor. If it even survives the Carnifex. The hope is that the Carnifex gets it. I'm guessing. And I'm definitely gonna save my command points, of which I have a lot more this battle round. I have 3, 4, 5, 6 command points this battle round to play with as the Imperial Guard, so there is that. Because my guys in reserve still generate. Now, this guy didn't choose to outflank. He chose instead to Deep Strike. Now, Deep Strike is very similar, except you first place the model down. I actually placed him over here, right in the center of all of this. And now, then you roll a d6. On a 1 to 2, he mishaps and he goes back into reserves. On a 4 to 5, after I place him, my opponent gets to scatter him 5 inches and they moved him back there. On a 5 to 6, he'd arrive perfectly right there, and I was hoping for a 5 to 6, but right there is where he landed. Thanks. Oh well, he should still do amazing work. He should still do amazing work indeed. He actually has a lot of guns, including psychic weaponry, which is quite fun. Psychic weapons are weapons you get from knowing a psychic discipline, like Smite. Smite is a psychic weapon. It's Assault 3, 18 inches, Strength 5, AP 3 with a psychic weapon, which means the stuff gets hot. So there's that. And psychic weapon also means it's not affected by a bunch of other rules. So there is that. So he's actually got a lot of Daka. He's got a lot of anti-infantry Daka, but in melee he's still no slouch either. So, going now into the Tyranids movement phase proper, because that was now just done at the start of the movement phase. Okay, so end of the movement phase. These Termagants just moved up, and he just moved up to sit on the objective. These guys really can't do much to this Leman Russ, so their best bet is to just try and force it back, or to just hope this guy kills it and slingshot it. Because they actually can't physically harm its front armor, which is why they're not bothered shooting at it, but they will try and pop some shots down this way in all likelihood. So we'll go now to the Tyranid shooting phase, where first up is Psychic Powers. Alright, beginning of the shooting phase, no Psychic Powers are coming from either of these Psychers, the Hive Tyrant or the Tyranid Prime. Instead, going straight to regular shooting, where they will likely just be throwing down some smites. Though mostly this guy, as his smite is not really in range of anything to, as a psychic weapon to be anything, and so his Death Spear is the better weapon. He can only shoot one weapon, but since he's a monster, he can shoot all of his weapons. So Very important, very powerful. So, I think I'm about to lose a bunch of guardsmen. Okay, so, having just concluded the Tyranid shooting phase, I'm going to give a summary. So, this guy first, since he counted as having moved, came in, and normally he would have been hitting on 6 as having moved, since he's got a heavy weapon, and he's monstered. Monsters are not relentless in the long war, but the Tyranid adaptation that he was given did, the adaptive physiology, makes him relentless. So, made sure that he was hitting on 4s. Now, his weapon, the bioplasma, is this one. What is it called? The bioplasmic cannon is also linked. So for those who don't know, it's the old twin link. So re-rolling all failed hits. So hitting on 4s, going after the Sentinel, all 4 attacks hit, and then wounding on 3s, 2 wounded. Those 2 wounds went straight through the Sentinel's armor for, leaving it on 1 wound. But, just that 1 dice, that not statistically average dice, meant that the Sentinel is still there. On the other hand, this guy, the Tyranid Prime, put some shots at down range with his quite long-range Death Speeder and killed a single guy. Meanwhile, this guy, the Flyrant, Hive Tyrant, used the Brain Leeches, absolutely shredded the Guardsman squad that was there, split the fire, putting his Smite Psychic weapon into these guys, actually dealing no wounds on them, completely whiffed that roll. And then these guys here, one guy who was within range and line of sight of these guys, fired 1 shot, hit once, and wounded. And the guy failed his 5-up cover save. So, 1 wound on them. Not the best shooting phase that the Tyranids could have asked for, but a pretty good one. This not dying is going to really hold up this flank here, in all likelihood. These guys might be able to pinprick at this, but they won't be able to really bring it down. He might be able to let his fire and do some reliable damage against it, but it's not his preferred target either. His preferred target is the little groups of Gaunts, or typically things like Space Marines, so those Tyranid warriors. So that's not so great for the Sentinel in a retrospect. So this side's going to be kind of interesting, and it might tip the balance and depending on what Imperial Guardsman stuff arrives to help out. But now we have to go into the charges for that Carnifex, which is probably the single most important charge to go to, and I will spend the first of one of my command points. I will spend one for incoming to Overwatch on that tank. So, it's not going to be great. That front heavy bolter can't draw line of sight to that. Actually, no, he might be able to. I have to go check something. Yes, actually. Wait. Yeah, so that heavy bolter is just in arc to be able to overwatch over there, but barely. So, yeah. I'm going to be overwatching with all of that going into that Carnifex right now. Using my command point to... oh, what am I doing? I'm still making the same mistake from last battle round. I can't issue a command point on it because there's no officers nearby. Duh. God damn it. I do not play Guard very often. I am actually currently learning Guard in the build-up to getting my own Valhallans for the Long War. Anyway, so, and this is like my 3rd game with the Guard in the Long War. And it's my first game with the, and like I've only been playing Guardsmen in the Long War. And it's the first time I played them like a couple months ago since I played them in 7th edition. So, please forgive me when I say dumb things like that. He cannot do that because there's no officer nearby to give him that order. So, and I'm paying the price for not putting an officer on the field. I knew I should put that Commissar on my command squad here, but no, I thought, oh yeah, I know, I'll put the autocannon squad, mate. So yeah, that autocannon squad's gonna die now as well. Damn it. I've still got a chance. I've still got a lot of stuff in reserve. Oh boy, but this is starting to swing heavily against me here. Okay, so In the charge phase, what happened is he made his charge roll and got a 7 when he needed a 9. And so, now he could have, to clarify some rules, he could have declared this guy as a charge target, and he did. The rules on having to charge something you shot only apply if you do shoot something. If you don't shoot anything, you are free to declare any target as the target of the charge if they're within 12 inches. Now, he's also out of synapse, but he's not frenzied yet, because he's not injured. So he didn't have to declare a charge if he didn't want to. But failed the charge, rolled a 7, and chose to surge forward 7 inches, or as close as he could, to be just outside of the 3-inch no-go bubble that exists in the Long War. Just like Age of Sigmar, there's a 3-inch no-go bubble, so that charges can still fail on a double ones, unless you have modifiers. So, did not get into that, saves me a little bit, but now presents me this nasty target to try and deal with in my upcoming turn. And then we have to double check if this guy is actually within range of them. He did technically shoot at them, so he can declare them for a charge. Damn. Okay, so he was within range. He did make the charge. He got in within half an inch as he needed to. He barely in. And now that's a goodbye squad there. So now we actually get to go into the charge phase. Or into the combat phase, sorry. So, in the combat phase, you pick each combat going on the board. Now, a combat occurs when there's enemy units within 3 inches of each other. So, these guys are within 3 inches, so this is a combat we now have to resolve. So, now, at the beginning of the combat, we go to initiative steps to resolve the sequence. And there's initiative 10 through initiative 1. So, why don't you go ahead and roll your Hammer of Wrath, which occurs at initiative 10. Now, he has Hammer of Wrath. He has Hammer of Wrath 1 by default. His wings would also give him Hammer of Wrath, but it doesn't stack if you have 2 of the same rule. You just take the best one if you have multiple versions. But on top of that, being Behemoth Allegiance, you get an extra Hammer of Wrath attack, which occurs at initiative 10. And monsters and vehicles and walkers and aircraft, when they do Hammer of Wrath, do it at their strength and AP 2, whereas everyone else just does it at AP nothing at their strength. So, go ahead and roll that up. Okay. So, on the charge, because he's strength 7, this thing is absolutely murderous. I knew this was going to happen. The autocannons were my best bet to actually deal with it. So what happens here is this guy already has a win allocated to him, so he has to die. I don't get any armor saves against these, and then I'm going to say... It doesn't matter. I'm going to say this guy dies. And then come initiative, we work our way down, and then his regular initiative is 6, and this is when he gets to fight. Normally, he's within 3 inches there to be able to pile in and fight. He's got a range of 1 inch. Now, it is important to note that only guys within 1 inches of an enemy model can attack, or within base contact. So, hiding up on buildings is legitimate strategy in this game. And getting within 1 inch is important. It means only really a lot of the time, only the front rank on a lot of charges can fight, and positioning your charges is very important. Since these guys are rather small, they'd be able to fight in 2 ranks, for example. But, if someone was to funnel them through a gap, only like maybe a couple could fight. So manipulating that is very important because of how dangerous and powerful melee is in this edition. So, having gone with now to this, this scenario is putting me in a bad spot. If it wasn't hold or die, I might have had a chance, but it really now comes down to what I dice roll. We gotta go now resolve his attacks. He has a lot of them at initiative 6, but I can pretty much guarantee that guy's dead. Okay, so how this happens at initiative 6 is now he gets to fight. Now, he compares his weapon skill with a target model within 1 inches for resolving his attacks. So he has weapon skill 3. I have no way to issue any orders to increase that. So, and he has weapon skill 6. So, because of this, how the weapon skill chart works in the Long War is, if your weapon skill is double the target's weapon skill, you hit on 2s. If it's higher than the target's weapon skill, you hit on 3s. If it's equal to the target's weapon skill, you hit on 4s. If it's lower than the target's weapon skill, you hit on 4s. And if the target's weapon skill is double what your weapon skill is, you hit on 5s. So there is that. And no, you can never hit on anything worse than a 5 unless someone has put in modifiers on you. Now he has 6 attacks, he's got 7 for the charge. Now, because you're Behemoth, you do have Rage, which, how Rage works is you can choose to get a number of bonus attacks equal to the value next to Rage. He is Rage 1, being Behemoth. But you take a penalty to your weapon skill. So, remember to think about that. Okay, yep, decided not gonna do that. Gonna roll here in the background behind me. Getting a lot of hits. Let me show those to the viewers. Let me take that way. Yep. So all but one of those hit, which I just removed. It was this one. So, yep. So that hit on all those hit on 2s. So now that will wound on 2s. Roll that for me. Okay, yeah, he dead. So he has Scything Claw, Scything Talons, so monstrous Scything Talons kicking on his feet. Yeah. He is now dead. Now, since there are no enemy units within 3 inches of him, and we don't need to resolve combat to determine who won, normally, if there's still models left, you would tally up the total number of wounds done by each side, and the result would tell you who won. The loser would make a panic test. If they failed, they would run away. If they passed, they would stay. But since there's no one within 3 inches, now the Hive Tyrant can sweeping advance. And the Hive Tyrant sweeping advance is, well, we'll double check the sweeping advance. It changed recently, I think, in the last episode, so just gonna double check. Yeah, so just double checking. The sweeping advance is D6 plus initiative. So there is that. So, okay, so he's going 4 plus 6. Now he can end up in combat with someone, probably not close enough to get the tank, just gonna make those casualties a moment, but definitely good enough to get these mortars, so we'll let you consider that. Now, what is important is that when you sweeping advance, if you would end within half an inches of an enemy unit that is panicked in the phase and is retreating, you deal 1 automatic wound to that unit as you catch them, if you end in base contact for any model. It's for each model you end in base contact with. So, for example, if these 2 guys had lived and like 2 of them had run and he ended in base contact with 2 of them, he dealt 2 automatic wounds. So, there is that. So, we'll just take a moment to resolve that. Okay, so, yeah, he swept his 10 inches into them, tying them up. It's not a new combat because it's happened at the end, so, yeah. Now they're going to have to fall back if I want them to survive, because he's still a higher initiative, so they're just going to be running and just mostly useless. They can try and fling some mortar shells on the fly, or shoot with their las guns, but that's just about it. Fortunately, they do have las guns, so they have options. They might have to go, I don't know, las guns and gaunts. It will really depend on my position now with the Imperial Guard, based on what comes in. So, we'll now go into turn 2, Imperial Guard. Okay, so, rolling for my reserve. My company command squad came on within 6 inches here. I brought on these guys who pass their outflank on this with the special weapons over here. Ready to take on him. And then all the way on the other side of the battlefield, I brought on the Chimera, which is carrying... so because I all had them in the Chimera, I only had to roll once for them. But I had the Commissar and a squad with Flamers in that. So, just simply because I cannot yield and contest... I cannot yield this side. I have to break through and get that objective, or kill some stuff. Now we've got to go into movement phase. These guys, I've accepted their fate. The tank, however, has a lot of decisions to make as I do the rest of my movement, including for those 2 squads over there. Alright, so the tank just moved back there, and that's where it had to stop because of the difficult terrain, giving it -2 to its movement when it touched that. These guys fell back from the Hive Tyrant. I'm gonna have to ignore the Hive Tyrant for now. I need to kill the Carnifex. The Carnifex, they're both a problem, but one thing at a time, right? I need to focus these things down, so while I have its firepower, this is going to go into the Carnifex because it's more reliable at killing it than this. This is mostly good anti-infantry stuff. Autocannons, which were primarily part of my anti-monster strategy, are gone. So now, over here, I'm going to rely quite heavily on these grenade launchers. Buffed up with this, and basically the plan is to use a lot of command points here, since I'm going second in the battle round, to absolutely just eviscerate this guy here with as many things. I'm probably going to take aim here, take aim there. I'm probably going to first rank, second rank, and they won't do anything. So, yeah. So, I'll be back after my shooting phase. Okay, so it was one impressive shooting phase for me, all things considered, since I was mostly aiming for chip damage. It could have gone better. A few extra dice rolls had gone my way, and things might have been feeling a little bit better. At this point, it's still a pretty close game, though. Going into this next turn, things might start to turn against me. Because things are about to get real tight. So, between everything over here, the plasma cannon there, these guys here, these guys with their las guns, and these guys with their grenades and las guns, we brought down this guy to 2 wounds remaining on the exocrine. The grenade crack launcher, the crack grenades did excellent work, punching through, and they took a wound off. The lasguns in the squad also managed to deal a wound really ridiculously. And then so did the command squad. They also managed to get 1 wound through. And then so did the plasma gun on the Sentinel. So we managed to get 4 wounds in across the board on him. And yeah, just brilliant to have him down that low. However, if, depending on how well reserves go, Gribblies might come on and ruin our day. And I had to spend a lot of command points on that. I put take aim on them, and first rank, second rank, just as I said, which meant they got to shoot twice. They still did nothing. Now, going over here, the tank chipped off a wound with its battle cannon, but the rest of its rounds bounced off pretty helplessly. It owes a pinning test, though, which will resolve in a moment. And that one there actually did, the Chimera did far more damage, taking off 2 wounds, leaving that guy there on 1 wound. Now, they are monsters, and monsters have regeneration as a special rule by base, which means they'll heal 1 wound at the beginning of the next turn. So he's at 1, so he'll go to 2. And he's at 2, so he'll go to 3. So that's not ideal. I wish oh man, just... I shouldn't have split my forces like I planned. I wanted to try and envelop, but no. No. And the biggest mistake was not having an officer on the field straight up. That was a core mistake. In retrospect, I should have just started with nothing but the Chimera, the mortars, and the Lehman Russ, and all the contents of the Chimera. Well. Games are won and lost in deployment, movement, and then the other phases. And for psychic powers, these guys just catalyst themselves. He didn't catalyst. He used the horror on that Chimera over there, barely being able to see it, and it was within range, so he was able to the horror, giving it -1 hit. And it still managed to get those wounds through even with the -1. He catalyst himself, though. Because catalyst can only cast on the Psycho or its attached unit, so there is that. So horror is one that to target someone within 24. So there is that. Going now into no charges from me. I'm not insane. I am not going to fight that like so. So yeah. Time for Tyranids turn 3. Okay, so, just finished reserves, about to move into movement phase, but clarifying on what happened with the pinning test that was owed on this guy. He passed it because he was leadership 10 from being within 24 inches of him. This guy actually over here was hit with a pinning weapon, the Exocrine, from the heavy bolter over there, which is a pinning weapon. So he was only leadership 6, but he passed it rolling a 5, so he pretty lucky there. And then 4 reserves, both Hormagaunt units came on. One here in this corner behind the Chimera, and then one all the way over there behind that infantry squad. So, I gotta generate my command points. I'll once again have 6. Tyranids movement. The Tyranids getting aggressive here on turn 3, abandoning the central objective for a moment. The Tyranid Prime comes over, he ends with incoherency of this unit of Termagants and declares that he's going to attach to it. So they are now attached to the Tyranid Prime, so they're all just now one unit for the purposes of targeting in the shooting phase. Then the Carnifex stomps all the way back over here on the other side of these trenches to come charge this. This guy, the Hive Tyrant, flies right behind here, looking to shoot this guy in his rear armor with his weaponry. It does potentially stand a chance of actually hurting him with strength 6 versus armor 10. It's not high chances, but it's chances nonetheless, which will give us a chance to look more at damaging vehicles. And then following up with the charge, he's landed just outside of 3 inches. And then over here, the Exocrine has decided to stay in place as it stares down the guardsman and this sentinel. So now going into the shooting phase, looking to see how this goes. So be right back with the results of that. Okay, so getting here towards the end of the shooting phase, what has happened is between his smite and one shot from him, this unit of mortars that was here, 2 of them died, and then the last guy panicked and ran off the board, abandoning the Emperor and the Emperor's Light. He will be surely executed if he is ever found again, if he doesn't die in the wilderness of Australise. Over on this side, because of my mistake, I realized I should have actually positioned my guy, my sentinel, and moved him behind the bushes to at least get a cover save. Since I had that opportunity, I still would have had plenty of range. I should have done that, but I didn't. Of course, the Exocrine just blasted him off the field because he stood still. His Exocrine's symbiotic targeting rule kicked in, and he hit on freeze at Ballistic Skill 4 instead, and just wiped him off. Now he's been shooting at the back of him, and now this is how it works. Now we talked about before how shooting at vehicles is done in the long war. So when you shoot it, you hit one of its armor facings, depending on which one you are targeting. So for, based on what direction you're firing. If you can't come to an agreement with your opponent, or you're not sure what side of the vehicle you're targeting, you resolve it against the vehicle's side armor. But most of the time it's pretty obvious, especially in the case of tanks like this. And now, so this guy is 14 on the front, 13 on the sides, and 10 on the back. So Leman Russes are pretty chunky, and in a straight fist fight, they are hard to deal with. However, shooting him in the back here has yielded some results, as he has gotten the Tyranid Prime with strength 6, shooting at armor 10. So what happens is, instead of rolling to wound, you roll to penetrate. And by rolling to penetrate, you roll a d6 for each hit that you got, and you add the strength to that d6 result. And if it is equal to or greater than the armor facing that you're hitting, you score a penetrating hit. And then you roll in the vehicle damage chart. Now, with the vehicle damage chart, if you are AP2, you get +1 to your roll on chart. If you are AP1, you get +2 to your chart roll. So, just rolling over here for us, mate. Let's see the results, and I will read them out as they go. So that's a 2. That is only a pinning test on him. Keep going. Resolve these in a minute. A bit further. Alright, so 5. 5 is a weapon destroyed, so that destroys one of his primary weapons. Now, because I didn't buy any extra weapons for him, it has to destroy one of his 2 primary weapons that he's got. I get to pick as the player that controls it. He's got his battle cannon, and he's got his heavy bolter. His non-pictured here heavy stubber is a secondary weapon. So keep rolling. That's a 3. So that's another pinning test. That's a 4, so that's another weapon destroyed. So now he's lost both his weapons. That is a 1. That is superficial damage. So you scratch the paint. That does nothing. And then that is another 3. So that is another pinning test. So that's total. That's actually 3 pinning tests I gotta make on this Leman Russ. And he's lost both his battle cannon and his heavy bolter. Yeah, this was a bad position for him. I really screwed up here with the Leman Russ, but it is at least soaking fire. It now only has the heavy stubber left, so I kind of have no reason to commit it against the monsters other than to just try and ram them. Yeah, I'm gonna take a page out of the Tyranid book and use its Hammer of Wrath to ram something to death. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so, in fact, in retrospect, since this guy got down to 1 wound, I should have done that, damn it! Why did I really think of that now? Oh, man. Because vehicles can... Oh, man. Never mind. It's because if it had not worked. See, this guy is more than... See, in melee, he's pretty much guaranteed to kill it. But, yeah. Because when you attack things in melee, you hit their rear armor. And Carnifexes, and even this in melee, is terrifying. Now that this is finished shooting, if it goes to charge the Leman Russ, it will basically just be finishing it off at this point. Alright, now we'll go into the charge phase. Okay, so having resolved those leadership tests, the Leman Russ has a Vox built into it, so it could re-roll those. But I rolled garbage. Apparently leadership only really dislikes me today, even though I have multiple ways to re-roll it. As a result, well, he's now pinned. Now, we haven't seen pinning come into action yet, so now pinning means that a unit that's pinned can't advance and has -1 to hit. And cannot make reactions, which is another thing we haven't done. But we're about to do reactions in just a moment, as we resolve a reaction over here from the declared charge. But we've gone and resolved the charges over here already. This one got in, pretty easy. But then this one, requiring 5 inches, failed by rolling a 4. So, couldn't even finagle it to end with an half an inch. Just failed. Just failed, Carnifex. Yeah. Sucks for you. Okay, so now we have to go explore a reaction over here. Okay. So, what happened here is they declared their charge and they made it in. They rolled incredibly high, actually, and the Hormagaunts got in. Now, I used a command point to have the sergeant issue the order of incoming, which allowed them to overwatch. Now, normally, overwatch is a reaction. A reaction you have to sacrifice your shooting to do during your opponent's turn. Now, there's ways to get around it, as per, like, the command point I just spent. But also, every unit, for the player who starts, who goes second in the first battle round, starts with all of his units set to do any reactions that they can do. So, for example, if I'd gotten first turn charged, I would have been able to overwatch. Technically, my tank could have, was set to smoke. which didn't matter because didn't get shot. So there's that. So, and with that, the Overwatch there actually successfully killed 4 of these Hormagaunts off. And now it's going to bring us to the combat phase. Now, they have a higher initiative than the Guardsmen, at initiative 4. The Guardsmen have initiative 3. I will be spending my last command point for the round to have them fix bayonets, which will give them +1 weapon skill, which will actually help them hit back. It won't really help them that defensively. But if they do survive this, there's a chance things might go somewhat well. So let's see. The Hormagaunts, I always get Hormagaunts and Termagaunts confused. The Hormagaunts do strike first. So at initiative step 4, the Hormagaunts can get to pile in. They get to pile in 3 inches. The pile-in is very similar to the Age of Sigmar pile-in, you just have to end closer to an enemy model. So these guys are just going to pile in like so. I'm just showing as an example, so everybody doesn't have to do it. So I show them how it's done, and then like that piles in like that. So there. And now the guardsmen get ready to fight back. Get them unstuck from the Hormagaunts. So there is that. So, yeah. Now the Hormagaunts will now make their attacks. Now, they have, I don't know off the top of my head how many attacks they have off by heart. So let me just double check that. Okay, so Hormagaunts are actually quite deadly on the charge, apparently. So these guys are 1 attack base. They have 2 close combat weapons, so they get another one, so they're 2 attacks. And then, they charged. So, 3 attacks. So they are 3 attacks, now. And, I have to check if, Behemoth actually applies to them to get them rage. Alright. So, they do in fact gain the benefit of rage, but my opponents decided not to use rage at this given time, as it would actually take them down because I buffed their weapon skill to weapon skill 4 from weapon skill 3 with my command point order, or my order. If these guys used rage at this time, they would go down to weapon skill 2. Which, if these guys were still weapon skill 3, wouldn't be an issue, but because they're weapon skill 4 currently, going down to weapon skill 2 on the Hormagaunts would mean that they're double, which means they'd be hitting on 5s instead of 4s. So, wanting to get the most out of the attacks they've got, going to be swinging without the rage. So, yeah. 3 attacks apiece. Now, they can all fight, because they are all within base contact or an inch. So, we'll let you know how this resolves out, as they'll be hitting on 4s currently, because their weapon skill is lower than their target. Technically, you resolve this model by model, but everything here is the same weapon skill, so you can fast roll this. So, in the end, it actually would have been more efficient to have raged for the Behemoth Tyranids, as of no fault of their own. Actually, they had a lot of attacks. They were hitting on 4-ups. They just rolled so badly. Like, not statistically average at all. And then they only got 1 wound through on the end, which I put on this guy, because they have a weapon base is 2 wounds. And then we fought back, and the sergeant with Chainsword did nothing. But, the rest of the squad, after it piled in, managed to kill 2 of them. So, how about that? So now, we go into combat resolution now that we've reached the end of the initiative, because he swung at initiative 3, since I still had guys alive. I went at initiative 4, since I still had guys alive. I went at initiative 3. And then, now that we've reached initiative 0, end of combat. So now we calculate who won the combat. So, and we do this by the number of wounds inflicted on each other. So, he did 1 wound to me, and I did 2 wounds to him. So, yeah. So, since he lost combat, the Hormagaunts now need to make a panic test, and they are not in Synapse. But they also would have had Frenzy, I just realized, because you weren't actually in Synapse, so you actually get more attacks. So we're actually going to go resolve those attacks. That actually can be game-changing here, as we're going to go see how that would affect things. Okay, so very easily gets the Explodes result with his attacks, using the Rage and everything. Yeah. The monstrous sighting talons on his feet are Strength +2, AP2. So, got that Explodes result, got more than enough to destroy that Leman Russ. We do need to resolve the Explodes against him, which we'll do, but then we'll do that off screen, and we'll come back at the beginning of the Imperial Guard turn. Okay, so we are here at the end of my movement phase. My final unit did come on, and they came on over there, 6 inches from the table edge, 9 inches away from anything. Now, I did realize something at the end of my movement. This Regimental banner here has a rare ability in that anyone within 18 inches of it gets to add 1 to their combat resolution, which means I actually would have won the combat against these guys. But we just decided to say, hey, they passed a panic test, and end of story. That's how we resolved that, and then we carried on. So these guys performed a retreat move. So, retreat moves are moves that you perform when you're within 3 inches of an enemy unit, and you move 6 inches out of combat, but you cannot shoot or charge or anything. However, I am going to make it so that they can shoot, by giving them get back into the fight. I think it is on my orders. Let me double check that on my orders. Yes, it is. It is in fact called get back into the fight. I was right, and they count as if they had remained stationary instead. So that is good. Meanwhile, all this stuff started to shuffle this way towards the objective because it is turn 3. It'll be turn 4 next. I gotta get close to that because I don't think I can kill enough. This is one of the refresh units, so if I kill it, it's not coming back. So there is that. So I'm not afraid to kill this one. It's the other 2 Gaunt units that are going to be a little bit difficult. But if I can clear the field of some stuff here, if I can clear out 1 or 2 of these monsters, I should be in a fine-ish position. This thing has to die. Gosh, I really needed to die. So, we will go into that. Meanwhile, over here on the opposite side of the hill, the Chimera moved back, but before it did, these guys disembarked. You can disembark up to your movement, so these guys disembarked 6 inches. Got close here, ready to flame stuff and sell their lives dearly for the Emperor as the Commissar encourages them. As I said, these guys came on, so they do count as having moved, but the Commissar will, if I read get back into the fight right, so it's only if they retreated. So yeah, so it means that Heavy Bolt is going to be only hitting on 6s because he came in from movement, but there is that, because he counts as having moved. And of course the Chimera fell back to create some distance between it and Mr. Carnifex. Meanwhile, this guy can just chill out over here and do nothing. He's fast, so he'll get to where he needs to in turn 4, but I hope to have less of a Tyranid army to deal with at the end of my shooting phase, which I'm going to go into now. But I guess first we'll do Psychic Powers, and we'll see what Psychic Powers my opponent's going to do in the shooting phase. Alright, yeah. Just doing one, it's the Horror, and it was successful going from the Tyranid Prime onto this unit, giving them -1 to hit and -1 to their leadership. So, yeah. That's going to make things a little bit tougher. They're going to be hitting on 5s now, being, yeah. But we'll make do, because the Commissar's about to do some stuff here. He's got a special order. He also gives the unit Stubborn, so their leadership can't be modified. So that effect of the -1 leadership from the Horror isn't going to affect them. but the -1 to hit for their weapons is, sadly. So he's going to, however, issue an order, which requires him to kill a guy and subtract 1 of my command points. And now they get to add 1 to the number of attacks they get to make with their lasguns. I'm pretty sure is how it works. I will double check that and make sure that's right as I go into do the shooting phase, because he's going to fire over into them, and they're going to use their flamer there, which is great, because the flamer has a 12-inch range. And how spray weapons work, which is a special rule that flamers have in the Long War, is that you hit every model in the target unit up to a maximum number of 7 hits that are within range. So, since they're all within range there, that's going to be a max 7 hits, which is going to be neat. So, yeah, we're going to flame them, and we're an infantry company, and we're actually going to show off that we're an infantry company by throwing grenades as well, and grenade bundles, which is the primary thing that this Rite of War gives me to use for the Imperial Guard infantry. My grenades get barrage 3. So, yeah. Hopefully let's blast some chunks out of some infantry and roast some nids. If I get lucky, I might inflict enough wounds on them, but since they're horrid, probably not. So, let's jump into it, and I'll tell you the results after it's done. Okay, so that was a whopper of a shooting phase. It's 5 seconds for you, but that was quite a bit for me, because I unleashed everything I had there. I have 0 command points left for the Imperial Guard. These guys first ranked, second ranked. So there's that, and even hitting on 6s, that didn't do anything, but these guys, combined with the grenades from my Grenadier rule, from my Rite of War, letting my grenades be barrage 3, some great grenade placements, even with the scatter, meant that this squad got bombed off, like mass casualties from grenades, and then the lasgun fire finished them off sufficiently. They're not really passing their saves, apparently. The Tyranids are really struggling with their saves. At the same time, this unit, it doesn't cost a command point because you pay the price by killing someone. So killed one guy here, absolutely flooded like these guys with fire, blasted them off with grenades. Finished, the lasguns weren't very effective, but the flamethrower. So what basically happened is the lasguns weren't very effective. The grenades scattered all over the place, but still got enough hits from how it was clumped up to be able to blast them to pieces with the barrage 3, and then combined with the flamer here to finish off, and then the lasguns into the unit, because it was still one unit when I started shooting at it. The lasguns only did 1 wound to him between all of their firing, but the flamer and the grenades did the rest. He put a pot shot into the Carnifex, which, as you can see, is not here anymore. And it missed. But this guy, even through the Spore Assists, which gave the Spore Armor, the Spore Carapace, which gave it -1 to hit, even through that, still managed to eke 2 lucky wounds, both with the Heavy Bolter and the Heavy Stubber. Not the Multi-Laser, funnily enough. So even though these 2 squads that I eliminated are coming back, potentially, maybe, depending on how dice rolls, the Carnifex is gone forever, which is good. Over here, it was something relatively different. What happened is these guys fired into the Execrete and whiffed. Absolutely whiffed, taking my last command point with them. These guys shot their lasguns and stuff at it and did a wound. And the guy with the heavy flamer split his fire and shot backwards into those gaunts, roasting all but one of them, and then the last one panicked because it wasn't in Synapse and ran away. So, yeah, it fled off the board that way because that is the Tyranids' declared board edge. And then these guys even though they got back into the fight with the command point, they did some shooting and negligible, nothing. So he's not only 1 wound on that, so he's not going back up to 4 wounds. He's staying at 3 with his regen. And yeah, still a lot of work to do. This guy is still a threat, still ready to do things. So we now need to deal with the remainder of the Tyranids. I have scored a lot of points this turn. As we go into turn 4, it will likely be the last turn. I doubt we'll make it to turn 5. I don't know. And the Tyranids can win if they can hold onto this objective, or if they kill pretty much most of my army in this coming phase, which is potentially possible, which means then it will become a race to see who can take the objective, and I will have to bank everything on it. As we'll do a quick calculation as we go into turn 4, and I refresh my command points about who has the most victory points currently. Okay, so beginning of Tyranids, turn 4. Now I have refreshed back up to my 6 command points. The score is currently 6 points for the Imperial Guard, 4 points for the Tyranids. And now, of the 2 units that can still come back, the Hormagaunt, one of the Hormagaunt units, and one of the Termagaunt units. One of the Hormagaunt units arrived this turn. Not the unit the Tyranids wish arrived. Because the shooting would have been far more useful right now at this point in time. But put them here, gonna try for the same thing again. And now we're gonna go into the movement now. Decided to bring them over on this side because the argument was that this side just basically can run to that central objective, and that will just be the capstone, and like the Tyranids are no coming back from that. So for that, and the Tyranids at this stage are not achieving their secondary, but neither is either player. So the general thought is that this guy on his own should be able to deal with that, and especially with him helping. So, still not sure on where he's going to go. He might actually come this way, or he might go that way. It is a matter of we'll see. So we'll be back after the movement phase has concluded for the Tyranids. Okay, so end of movement. Tyranids got very, very aggressive. So there's that. What is it? Exocrine, that's what it is. Exocrine decided to move forward, just with a regular move, since the Tyranids picked Relentless as their adaptive physiology for their monsters this game. Not needing to fear, and not particularly needing or caring about the Ballistic Skill 4, and Ballistic Skill 3 with Linked will be fine enough for picking off Guardsmen. These guys are still there. Over here, the Tyranid Prime decided to move forward to face down those guys and bring absolute ruin to them. And the Hive Tyrant chose to fly over and do the same, because after doing some measuring, decided it can do its most good over here against these targets. And then, if it needs to, it can swing from here to this objective to cap it in the final turn. Alright. So, we've now just come back from the Tyranids shooting phase as well, where we've just brushed over it. Nothing real new to introduce here. The Flyrant wanted to try and get a bit of damage onto this squad, but couldn't really get it done. So he put his shots into this, and had some really subpar rolling between his Smite and his Devourers with Brain Leech. He actually, in the end, wasn't too effective against them, and really struggled. He did kill a fair number, but he couldn't wipe the whole squad like was intended, even with this guy helping with his Death Spitter. Over here, a little bit more success, but still not great. The Exocrine shot the Special Weapons Squad, almost caused them to panic, which we still actually owe a panic on this unit here, which I want to check to resolve in a moment, that I will. But yeah, killed 3 guys, caused a panic test. They passed the panic test after a re-roll from the banner there. Now, I will go ahead and roll for their panic test that is owed them, because they did indeed lose 25%. Well, okay then. They're not going nowhere. Cadia stands? Australis stands? Australise stands. We just completed the charge phase. He tried for a charge, the Flyrant into this unit. He also tried for a charge. He now only has 1 wound left after they overwatched. I spent pretty much half of my command points to overwatch and everything that got charged. They lowered him down by a wound. They completely failed and the Exocrine got in no problem. That unit got in no problem, but got thinned a little bit by the ranks of the guardsmen and their overwatch fire, but there's still enough of them. And so now we'll go into the combat phase. Okay, start of the psychic phase. This guy here, the Tyranid Prime, used the psychic power catalyst to give himself a 5-up feel no pain. So he did that, and then this guy used a Dominion so that every Tyranid this phase on the battlefield counts as being in Synapse, just to ensure that the guys over there don't accidentally break. So now we will go and start resolving combats. Beginning with this one, since we're standing right here. Damn! Oh man. Okay, so what happened there is the Tyranid Prime came in, struck first at initiative 5, beat the crap out of the guardsmen, got kind of unlucky, but really did a lot of good work, should not have died, but this heroic commissar, because I chose to spend 1 command point to give him an extra point of weapon skill, managed to get 1 extra attack through when he piled into attack, and that allowed him, with the power sword that I paid points for, that I considered dropping at the beginning of the game when I was building both these lists for us to use today, and absolutely miracle, got through the armor, got through the feel no pain, failed the feel no pain from the catalyst, and the Tyranid Prime goes down to this heroic, bloody... Oh, man. It was so close, too, because if the Tyranid Prime just held in there, the squad probably would have broken, and that would have been a sure thing for the Tyranids. Now the Tyranid, now the Hive Tyrant has to finish things off and survive a turn of my shooting, which isn't going to be too problematic since he's pretty chonk. But, oh man, way to go, Commissar Schneider. Way to go. The Commissar Schneider, the man. Unfortunately, that is all that is left of that squad. These guys are the casualties I gotta take away right now. As we go into these guys over here. So, let's start resolving those. Okay, so over here, the Tyranids had a far more successful combat phase. And basically what has happened is he came in, smashed these guys aside, killed one just with his bulk, killed the rest by stomping on them, the good old Exocrine here. These guys did enough wounds to murder most of the squad, leaving just that gunner as a survivor with 1 wound remaining. He did no wounds back to them. He broke and panicked, even with the Regimental banner there, and then fled 8 inches that way. These guys swept 7 inches, which was enough to catch him, so they just decided to just fold in onto this command, onto the HQ. Now, things are looking pretty dire for both sides, actually. So, this last turn, going into this next turn for me and the Imperial Guard, will really decide how this battle plays out. Some important things. I gotta try and rally him. I gotta get them the hell out of there. I only have 2 command points to work with, and I've got 2 guys over here and a Chimera behind that hill with an infantry squad that are way out of position now. So now things are getting desperate, I would say. absolutely desperate. Alright, things are getting desperate now as we are at the end of my movement phase for the Imperial Guard. The command squad backed away through this muddy trench, and then I've used a command point for get back into the fight for them so that the counters having stood still. This was the only place they could go as they couldn't get far enough from the Hormagaunts to go that way. This guy managed to rally, which is incredibly great. This guy, just to be a nuisance, this brave sergeant, he moved himself to get to there, going as fast as he could. He's just within range of the objective at 6 inches. Then, over on the other side, basically the Commissar fell back. Well, he didn't retreat. He moved to within 2 inches of this squad and joined them as they kind of met him here after moving up. And then the Chimera moved up as well. Now, I have 0 command points left as I'm going into this shooting phase. So, yeah, a miracle needs to happen somehow. I don't think I can do it. I think I just have to kill as much as possible and pray that by taking this, by ending on this, the Tyranids do not have enough victory points. I have a feeling it's going to be damn close by the end of this. So let us see as I go into my shooting phase. Okay, so a less than stellar phase for me. For the shooting phase, this guy decided to put the Horror onto the Chimera to give it -1 to hit and leadership, which was annoying. And then it decided to also, because it's mastery level 2, use its second psychic power, deciding it didn't care about holding on for later in the turn for like charging and combat phases, which I don't think, honestly. So used Catalyst, got both of them off, no perils, and then what I did is over here, this unit shot at them. He issued his special command point for the Commissar. Executed dude to give them extra attacks. Didn't quite work out. And then between these, did 3 wounds to this Hive Tyrant. But you'll see I haven't put any wound counters here. That's because it passed every single one of its feel no pains. So, balls. Over here was actually fraught with more success. Basically what happened is the machine gunner did some gunning into those Hormagaunts. It wasn't very successful, it didn't kill any, but it did cause a pinning test and they did get pinned. And then this squad, the Heavy Flamer, killed like 3 of them, 3 or 4 of them, and they then failed their panic test. They panicked and fell back because they weren't synapsed. And then the rest of the shots that were split into this guy bounced off. Oh, and now that is the end of the Imperial Guard turn. So, yeah, that is the end of the Imperial Guard turn. So, yeah. Tyranids, turn 5. Okay, so we've just finished resolving all the start of movement phase stuff for the Tyranids. Now, while we were doing that, we also calculated the current score. So, in some news, the Termagants didn't come on. So, let that sink in. So they didn't come on, and then we did the rally for the Hormagaunts over there, and they failed, and they ran away. So, yeah, and what that happened is when we were doing the calculation for score, it's actually 7 for the Guardsmen, 6 for the Tyranids. The Tyranids really caught up and have done good work. The Tyranids have failed to finish off a few units, which is why they're a bit behind. And then because those guys ran off, it became 8 for the Guardsmen, 6 for the Tyranids. So now the Tyranids need to kill some units. There's only these monsters left. It's crazy. He's gonna heal up to 4 wounds now. He's getting way back up there in terms of HP. This is a problem with monsters. You can't really chip damage them. You gotta try and put them down as quickly as possible before they regen. So that is not particularly good news for the Imperial Guard and myself. And this is worth 3. So this could be anyone's game at this point, but it's most likely going to swing the Tyranids' way. It will rely purely on miracles of faith for the Imperial Guardsmen at the end of this turn. We might not even go into Imperial Guard turn 5, but we will see. Okay, so this is the final positions for the Tyranids at the end of turn 5. As you can see, the Flyrant has moved up to this area here, to the center objective, and now is contesting it with this guy. If he removes it, he'll control it. And at the same time, this guy moved up to here. So, got to kill some things. The Flyrant needs to kill at least 2 units in order to take this game and firmly win by more than 1 point. They're not getting their secondary. The Imperial Guard might get their secondary, depending. So we will completely see on that one as we move into this final shooting phase for the Tyranids. Okay, so yes. Between the fire of this guy, who did a bunch of damage to these guys, but thanks to some handiwork from the medic, not all of them died, which was very good. Needed that. Medic literally just paid for himself twice over. And then the Flyrant here. Now, the Flyrant ended up splitting his smite into the guy over here, his things over into... one of his guns over into here, which killed the banner, and one into the guy there. Which has now tied the points up to 8 all. The Tyranids are not going to get their secondary at this rate, because I've still got units over there for the Imperial Guard, so they won't get consumed. They have not made back their biomass. And if these guys can get there and contest that, it will be a tie, unless this dies. So that is the Christmas miracle. This is the finest hour of the Imperial Guardsmen of Australis. Here in this small cleanup operation, which took place sometime during the original narrative campaign, during the War for Australis, potentially the Battle for Adelaide. During one of the times that they were victorious, no wonder they weren't able to hold the Tyranids at bay for longer, as the Flyrant, leader of the swarm, may escape. Hold or die it is, yeah. Hold or die. So, just straight into the Guardsman movement phase. This is it. So, the MG Heavy Bolter team got in the Chimera so that it can make use of its Las rifle, Lazaret. The Commissar stayed behind so that he could issue orders to the crew from outside of it and yell at them. This over here, these guys used move for one of my command points to auto go 6 instead of their initiative. So there's that, and they got up here with the -2 to the movement from going up this hump. And now they are contesting that objective. He is just outside of contesting that. So we will end with contesting. It now all comes down to my shooting phase. Can this die? And then also, is he actually within my deployment zone? Which I'm pretty sure he is. In which case, the Tyranids might win. No, it'll be a tie. So yeah, let's Let's go! Lo and behold, after everything, at the start of the shooting phase, he put Dominion on himself and also hit the table with Dominion, and then also hit the Chimera with the Horror again. And then putting everything it had into this, yeah, it was a real bad shooting phase for that Chimera, which otherwise performed real well. Ironically, its multi-laser was the worst performing weapon on it this entire game, and that's probably just because I was shooting it at the wrong enemy, out of desperation. So, yeah, they can't really do anything, neither can the Commissar any further. So, that is the state of the game. So, at this point, it actually ends in a tie. So we're going to go consult the mission objective to see what the haps is, for anything. So, maybe there's a tiebreaker in there that tells us what it is, but that is it for this game so far. So just give us a moment while we see what happens in the case of a tie. Okay, so having gone to the scenario real quick, it's not just about killing in this scenario, it's also about surviving. So we both score additional points for the number of units we have remaining on the board. And, quite to a mistake that I have made, I should not have put them in... I should not have put that heavy bolter team in there if I'd known that. That said, because they don't count as being on the field, that said, because this is contested, this goes... actually, it might not be contested. Because monsters count as multiple models for holding objectives, so we'll have to actually carefully measure if he is within range. And if he is, because vehicles also count as more models than monsters, so there is a question of who is holding this objective, who gets the extra 3 points from that, but it goes to 8 for the Tyranids, 8, 9, 10, and then 8, 9, 10 for 11. 11 points for the Imperial Guard. So we really need to determine who is holding this objective. It is that much of a nail biter in terms of how close this game has been. Okay, measurements are done. And after all of this, after everything that has transpired, monsters count as 5 models when contesting objectives. Vehicles count as 10. And after all the measurement, the Chimera is 1 inch out. I should have advanced with it. I should have gone flat out and gone its full movement, not bothered with shooting at this thing. My own... Oh, man. And we've agreed that I made that mistake. We're not going to go back and fix it. We're not going to adjust it. That was my mistake. I should have looked at the scenario more clearly and thought about that. I should have remembered the contesting. And how many models I counted for. I was hoping in my brain that I had a full squad of these, which would have more than happily tied him up. But no. That is it at the end of turn 5. It is a Tyranid victory point. Down to the wire, so close. They win by 3 points, which is the highest margin I've seen so far in all of the Long War games I've played. Most of the Long War games that we have played here have basically been won or lost or ties, and and most of the win or losses have been by 1 point. This is the first time we've had one that's been greater than that here in Hold or Die, where the Tyranids have held and not died. So, that is it. I have been Jay from Jade Productions. I've been playing the Long War now, in testing, helping with the writing of it. I love it. Every time we play, we pick up new problems, new things to fix, new ways to improve the system. It is a return to classic Warhammer as it was in older 5th editions. This was a... we didn't really get a chance to explain everything or show everything, just due to the nature of how we're filming this battle report. But all the rules are available for free. You can go down below and get them and check them out yourself. They are regularly updated. Every time there's a game or multiple games, and every time people report back testing and feedback, many things are updated to improve it. All errors are gotten rid of, things are fixed up. Like, absolutely. It is a growing game designed to support its fan community. It's pretty solid in of itself, even with its core rules, as they are in the current edition. This has been a fantastic game. We played this one as a learning one with me just taking care of everything and only showing some of the dice rolls. And even then, I ended up having a lot of fun. It ended up being superbly close and down to the wire. Absolutely crazy on that front, on this terrain and scenery. We were all over the battlefield. We were absolutely crazy. Just about every rule came up for our factions. I blew through my command points. I blasted away enemy units desperately, clearing them out very successfully, but oh man, it was just, in the end, just not enough. Where did this game go wrong? Where did it go right? A few dice rolls here and there, just like classic Warhammer, because there's no ability to re-roll in the Long War, or when there is, it's very rare and very limited, which means by the end of it, like, what the dice roll is what the dice roll. And like, that Hive Tyrant in these lists, like, these lists were built with very different ideas in mind. I built both for this game, and yeah, the Tyranids list was built purely around the idea of using the monsters to outflank and clear anything away. Just at 1,000 points, so I wasn't going to get too many monsters in there, and then just filling up with as many infantry as possible that can be recycled, just to clog up the works and try and get as much value out of them as possible, and, you know, use them as those disposable things. The guard list was one I had in my mind for a while, which was an infantry company, Rite of War, and using the Grenadier rules, and it worked pretty fantastically. Probably would have worked even better if I'd played it how, you know, if it wasn't for this scenario, if the deployment was a little bit different and I deployed a little bit differently. Having both armies have to put half of their guys in reserves during deployment was crazy. It meant more had to go into reserves than either of us wanted, especially the Tyranids. And by the end of it, the Tyranids just proved that bit triumphant. Even though their list was at a disadvantage, this guy here is like 300 points. And he was purely just will not die, will just shoot everything. This probably isn't even the optimal build for him in the Long War, but it's still a very good build, because he can still stab stuff with his feet, which are scything talons. He can still wreck things in melee. He's got good anti-infantry shooting, and he's got quite a lot of it. He's a powerful psyker at Mastery Level 2. He's got a host of rules. He's got the wings. He might get points discount in the future as we report back on the balance for the Long War, but that's the same with everything, and he was just amazing. He did so much work for the Tyranids, and yet at the same time, he won the game for them, yet at the same time, he probably could have done even more. I think my MVP has got to go to the Chimera, which did better work than the Lehman Russ. The Lehman Russ did amazing work during that first turn. I didn't support the Lehman Russ very well. I didn't make use of the Blitzkrieg part of my custom regiments, but I did make exceptional use of Buzzsaw. Buzzsaw, the extra attack on heavy bolters and heavy stubbers, was just absolutely phenomenal. Most of the damage I did was largely thanks to them, so there is that at the end. This guy was pretty good. The adaptive physiologies turned out to be a good choice. The Tyranids, adaptive physiologies, they've got so many options, they're very unique, and they let you really cater for the situation. I think the Relentless was a good call. Otherwise, this guy would have just been, not unkillable, but he was already durable enough thanks to what he was doing, and it's a good thing you make those decisions after deployment when you know what's going down on the field. So, Hive Tyrant is the victor here. And the Tyranids will escape this battle to continue fighting the Long War and continue the war for Australis some other time as they regroup for what will eventually be the waves that push the Australise Imperial Guard and PDF back from the southern fringes and the deep forests of the south into the north, into the Midlands, and to the walls of New Melbourne. So, yeah, that is it for this game. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. I have been Jay from JAAD Productions.